The first strike. The sirens wailed across New Haven Colony as Lieutenant James Morrison sprinted through the underground command center. The harsh red emergency lights cast long shadows across the reinforced walls, marking humanity's darkest hour since leaving Earth. No one had expected the Centauri Empire to strike without warning or provocation. Status report. Morrison barked as he burst into the control room. Holographic displays showed dozens of alien vessels descending through the atmosphere, their distinctive crescent shapes unlike anything humans had encountered before. "Sir, we've lost contact with the outer defense platforms," reported technical specialist Raj Patel, his fingers dancing across multiple screens. "The Centauri ships they just went right through our shields like they weren't even there." Morrison's jaw tightened as he watched the feed from the colony's surface cameras. The Centauri vessels moved with an eerie grace, their energy weapons carving precise patterns of destruction across New Haven's infrastructure. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message. "Get me Admiral Jackson on Earth Command," Morrison ordered, but the communications officer shook her head. "They've taken out our quantum relay stations, sir. We're cut off." Morrison had trained for countless scenarios during his years in the Earth Defense Force, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Centauri Empire had been watching humanity's expansion into space for decades, maintaining an aloof distance that many had mistaken for peaceful coexistence. Now Morrison understood. They had been studying humanity's weaknesses. Through the command center's armored viewport, he could see the massive evacuation ships rising from their underground hangars, carrying as many civilians as possible. The colony's defense force had already engaged the Centauri fighters, but their weapons seemed to barely scratch the alien vessel's advanced shielding technology. "Sir," Raj called out, his voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment platforms. They're positioning themselves above major population centers." Morrison felt his blood run cold. The Centauri weren't just attacking. They were planning to obliterate the entire colony. His mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. The civilian evacuation would take at least another 30 minutes, but they didn't have that long. "Launch all remaining fighters," he commanded. "Priority 1 is protecting those evacuation ships. And get me access to the colony's primary fusion core." His officers exchanged worried glances. "Sir, if we overload the core, we'll lose the colony," Morrison finished grimly. "But we'll take half their fleet with us and buy time for our people to escape. Sometimes victory means choosing how you lose." As the orders went out, Morrison accessed his personal comm unit. The face of his daughter appeared in a small hologram, a recording he'd made her promise to watch if anything ever happened to him. He pressed send just as the first Centauri bombardment struck the surface. The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Morrison coordinated the Defense Force's desperate holding action, watching as brave pilots sacrificed themselves to shield the evacuation ships. The Centauri's overwhelming technological advantage meant each small victory came at a terrible cost. When the last civilian ship cleared the atmosphere, Morrison input the final commands into the fusion core's control system. The Centauri ships were clustering closer, preparing to deliver their killing blow to the colony. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Morrison told his remaining staff. "Earth will remember New Haven, and the Centauri will learn that humanity doesn't fall easily." He pressed the override sequence just as the command center's ceiling began to crack under the alien bombardment. The fusion core's containment field collapsed in a carefully calculated sequence, and for a brief moment, New Haven Colony burned as bright as a star. The explosion vaporized the colony and everything within a 100-kilometer radius, including nearly a third of the Centauri attack fleet. As the light faded, the surviving evacuation ships jumped to faster than light speed, carrying with them the seeds of humanity's resistance and a burning desire for revenge. In the aftermath, Admiral Cassandra Reeves of the Centauri Empire stood on her flagship's bridge, watching the debris field that had once been New Haven Colony. Her subordinates expected her to be pleased with their victory. But instead, she felt a growing sense of unease. They sacrificed everything to save their people, she mused aloud, and to hurt us as much as possible in the process. She turned to her tactical officer. How many ships did we lose? 37 vessels, Admiral. Nearly a third of our attack force. Reeves nodded slowly. This was supposed to be a show of force, a quick strike to remind the humans of their place in the galaxy. Instead, a single human colony had bloodied the nose of the mighty Centauri Empire. As she composed her report to the High Command, Reeves couldn't shake the feeling that they had just made a terrible mistake. What no one yet realized, not the Centauri Empire, not the surviving colonists, not even Earth Command, was that the Battle of New Haven would be remembered as the moment that changed everything. Humanity had suffered its first interstellar defeat, but in doing so, they had shown the galaxy something unprecedented. A species willing to sacrifice everything not for victory, but to ensure their enemy's victory would cost them dearly. The war had begun, and despite their overwhelming technological advantage, the Centauri Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about human nature. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the strongest weapons, but the one with nothing left to lose. Defiance rising. Dr. Olivia Santos stood in her underground laboratory on Mars, surrounded by the scattered pieces of a salvaged Centauri shield generator. 3 months had passed since the fall of New Haven Colony, and humanity had learned to survive in the shadows of their own worlds. The Centauri Empire now controlled most of Earth's outer colonies, but they were finding occupation far more costly than conquest. "Run the simulation again," she ordered her AI assistant. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the complex wave patterns of Centauri shield harmonics. Something about their technology didn't make sense. It violated several fundamental laws of physics as humans understood them. A soft chime announced the arrival of General Marcus Way, the newly appointed head of Earth's resistance forces. His uniform bore no insignia. They'd learned quickly that hierarchy meant death if the Centauri caught you. "Please tell me you have good news, Doctor," Way said, his weathered face showing the strain of leading humanity's guerrilla war effort. "We lost another settlement on Europa yesterday." Olivia gestured to the holographic display. "Look at this energy pattern. The Centauri shields don't just block attacks, they redirect the energy. But there's a lag microseconds where the redirection hasn't fully engaged. Can we exploit it? Better." Olivia smiled for the first time in weeks. "We can reverse it. Turn their own shield strength against them. But I'll need access to more Centauri tech to perfect the process." Way's expression darkened. "That's suicide. The Centauri guard their technology more closely than their own lives." "Then it's a good thing I'm not working alone." Olivia pressed a button, and a new hologram appeared. A tactical map of a Centauri research facility on Titan. "I've been in contact with the local resistance cell. They've identified a weakness in the facility's security protocols." The next few hours were spent planning what would either be humanity's first major strike back against the Centauri or its most costly failure. Way coordinated with resistance leaders across the solar system, preparing synchronized attacks to draw Centaurid forces away from Titan. As the day of the operation approached, Olivia found herself working alongside Commander Nathan Reed, leader of the Titan Resistance Cell. His people had spent months mapping every detail of the facility, watching guard rotations, and placing sympathetic workers inside. "The Centauri think their technology makes them invincible," Reed explained during their final briefing. "They don't expect us to understand it, let alone turn it against them. That's their weakness. Pride." The attack began at solar midnight, Titan time. While resistance forces launched diversionary attacks across the solar system, Olivia and a small team infiltrated the research facility through maintenance tunnels. They moved silently through the darkness, their suits' thermal masking keeping them invisible to Centauri sensors. The first sign that something was wrong came when they reached the central laboratory. The security protocols they'd mapped were different, updated just hours before. "It's a trap?" Reed whispered, but it was too late. Centauri soldiers materialized around them, their advanced cloaking technology having hidden them perfectly. In the ensuing firefight, Reed took a plasma bolt meant for Olivia, buying her enough time to reach the facility's main database. As alarms blared and energy weapons fired around her, Olivia connected her quantum decoder to the Centauri system. She had seconds to download everything she could before they would be overrun. The data streamed into her device: weapon schematics, shield frequencies, and something unexpected: evidence that the Centauri Empire wasn't as unified as they pretended to be. "Dr. Santos," Wei's voice crackled through her comm. "Get out of there now. The Centauri are bringing in heavy reinforcements." Olivia grabbed her decoder and ran, the weight of humanity's future stored in its memory banks. The retreat was chaos, resistance fighters providing covering fire as they fell back to their hidden shuttles. Reed's body had to be left behind, along with too many others. Back in her Mars laboratory, as Olivia sifted through the stolen data, she made two discoveries that would change the course of the war. First, she confirmed her theory about the shield vulnerabilities. Second, and perhaps more importantly, she found evidence that several Centauri colony worlds were on the verge of rebellion against their empire's expansion. "The Centauri aren't invincible," she told Wei during their secure briefing. "Their empire is held together by fear and technology. We can break both." She displayed a complex series of calculations. "With these shield frequencies, we can not only penetrate their defenses, but turn their own energy weapons against them. And with the political intelligence we've gathered, we can find allies in unexpected places." Wei studied the data, hope gradually replacing exhaustion in his eyes. "How long until you can have a working prototype?" 2 weeks for the shield breaker, but we'll need to test it somewhere the Centauri won't expect. Somewhere they think they've already won. "New Haven," Wei said quietly. "We'll take back New Haven first. Show them that nothing they destroy stays destroyed, and no victory they claim is permanent." As they began planning the operation that would become known as Operation Phoenix, news arrived that changed everything. The Centauri had discovered Earth's secret shipyards in the asteroid belt. They were moving to destroy humanity's last major shipbuilding capability. We looked at Olivia. "How fast can you work?" She was already heading for her laboratory. "Fast enough. The Centauri think this is their moment of triumph. Let's make it the beginning of their downfall instead." The next phase of the war was about to begin, and for the first time since New Haven fell, humanity had more than just courage and determination on their side. They had a way to fight back. They had hope. The turning point. Commander Diana Pottle stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Defiance, watching as her fleet emerged from stealth jump points near the ruins of New Haven Colony. Her vessels were a patchwork of salvage technology and desperate innovation. Earth's last major fleet, upgraded with Dr. Santos' revolutionary shield-breaking technology. "All ships reporting ready, Commander," her tactical officer reported. "Centauri Defense Fleet is maintaining standard patrol patterns. They haven't detected us yet." Diana took a deep breath, remembering the thousands of hours of preparation that had led to this moment. "Begin Operation Phoenix. Signal the resistance cells on the surface." Across what remained of New Haven, hidden resistance fighters emerged from their underground bunkers. The Centauri had rebuilt the colony as a forward military base, never imagining that humans still lived beneath their feet, waiting for this moment. "Enemy ships are beginning to react," the tactical officer announced. "They're raising shields." Diana allowed herself a small smile. "Perfect. Initiate shield frequency attack pattern Santos Alpha." The Defiance fired first, its modified energy weapons striking the nearest Centauri cruiser. Instead of being absorbed or deflected by the alien shield, the beams seemed to catch and spiral, creating a cascade of energy that turned the Centauri's own defenses into a destructive force. "By the eternal void," breathed her first officer as they watched the Centauri ship's shields collapse inward, crushing the vessel like an eggshell. It actually worked. "All ships, engage at will," Diana commanded. "Remember your training." Time your shots with their shield regeneration cycles. The battle that followed would later be called the Miracle of New Haven. Human ships, though outnumbered, struck with surgical precision. Each shot exploited the fundamental flaw Dr. Santos had discovered in Centauri shield technology. The aliens tried to adapt, but centuries of reliance on their supposedly impenetrable defenses had left them unprepared for fighting without them. On the surface, resistance fighters led by Major Thomas Rodriguez seized key facilities with practiced efficiency. They had spent months memorizing every detail of the Centauri base, marking every weakness. Now they moved like ghosts through their own former homes, retaking what had been stolen from them. "Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're picking up transmissions from the Centauri Command Center. They're requesting reinforcements from their entire sector fleet." Diana nodded grimly. "Good. Send the signal to General Y. Phase 2 begins now." Across the galaxy, carefully planted resistance cells on Centauri-controlled worlds sprang into action. The intelligence Dr. Santos had stolen hadn't just revealed military secrets. It had identified dozens of worlds where the Empire's grip was already weakening. Now, as the Centauri rushed reinforcements to New Haven, these worlds erupted in synchronized rebellion. "Centauri ships are breaking formation," Tactical reported. "Their command structure appears to be collapsing." Diana watched as the enemy fleet split into confused groups, some trying to maintain the fight at New Haven, others rushing to respond to the sudden chaos across their territory. Her fleet pressed the advantage, methodically destroying or disabling every Centauri vessel that stayed to fight. "Commander." The sensor officer's voice was urgent. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Large fleet incoming. For a moment, Diana felt her heart sink, thinking the Centauri reinforcements had arrived faster than expected. Then her tactical display updated, and she saw the truth. The new arrivals were ships from the Pyrean Confederacy, one of the alien civilizations that had suffered under Centauri expansion for centuries. "This is Warmaster Cause of the Pyrean Liberation Fleet," a gravelly voice announced over the command channel. "We received your encoded transmission. Commander Pottle, the Pyrean Confederacy formally recognizes Earth's right to self-defense and offers our assistance in breaking the Centauri Empire's hold on this sector." Diana exchanged glances with her bridge crew. Dr. Santos' intelligence had suggested potential allies among the Empire's other victims, but they hadn't dared hope for such a rapid response. "Your help is most welcome, Warmaster. Let's show the Centauri what happens when their victims stand together." The battle for New Haven became a rout. Caught between human innovation and Pyrean fury, the remaining Centauri ships either fled or surrendered. On the surface, Major Rodriguez's forces secured the last Centauri strongholds with minimal casualties. Hours later, Diana stood in what had once been the Centauri governor's office, now serving as a temporary command center. Reports were flooding in from across known space. The Empire's iron grip was cracking everywhere at once. Their technological superiority, once thought absolute, had been turned against them. "The Centauri will respond with everything they have," General Y warned during their secure briefing. "They can't afford to let this victory stand. It threatens everything they've built." "Let them come," Diana replied, studying the strategic display showing human and Pyrean forces consolidating their positions. Every time they mass their fleet, more of their subject worlds see an opportunity to break free. They're fighting a war on too many fronts, and they never learned how to do that. We have. As if to emphasize her point, new reports arrived. 3 more alien species had declared their independence from the Empire, inspired by humanity's example. The Centauri's greatest weapon had always been fear. Fear of their invincible technology. Fear of their absolute power. Now that weapon was turning against them. "Send word to all resistance cells and allied forces," Diana ordered. "The next phase begins immediately. We're not just taking back what's ours anymore. We're going to dismantle their empire, piece by piece." As she looked out over the ruins of New Haven, where reconstruction crews were already at work, Diana remembered Lieutenant Morrison's last stand. His sacrifice had bought time for others to escape, to fight another day. Now that day had come, and humanity was proving what Morrison had known all along, that determination and adaptability could overcome any technological advantage. The war was far from over, but its course had been irrevocably changed. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or their shields, but in their ability to unite others against tyranny. The Centauri Empire had ruled through fear and division. It would fall to hope and alliance. Empires fall. High Chancellor Vexer of the Centauri Empire stood in his private chambers aboard the Imperial Palace Station, watching holographic reports of yet another system falling to the human-led alliance. 6 months had passed since the disaster at New Haven, and everything was unraveling. "My lord," his aide whispered, "the Inner Council demands your presence. The Pyrian fleets have broken through our defenses in the Arcturus sector." Vexer's crystalline eyes narrowed. The Pyrians had been servants of the Empire for centuries. Now they fought alongside humans with a ferocity that shocked even their former masters. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." As he made his way through the ornate corridors of the station, Vexer passed dozens of propaganda displays showing glorious victories that had never happened. The truth was far darker. Half his fleet commanders had either defected or disappeared, and those who remained loyal struggled to coordinate their forces without the quantum communication network the humans had somehow disrupted. The inner council chamber was chaos when he arrived. Council members shouted over each other, their elegant robes and traditional dignity forgotten in their panic. Silence. Vexer's voice cut through the noise. "We are the Centauri Empire. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. We will not be undone by primitives and rebels." With respect, Chancellor, Admiral Nexus stepped forward, her tactical display projecting a map of their crumbling empire. "We already are being undone. The humans didn't just break our shield technology. They showed others it could be done. Every subject species we ever subjugated is now rising against us, using our own weapons and ships." Meanwhile, aboard the Earth flagship Redemption, Fleet Admiral Rachel Thompson reviewed final preparations for Operation Starfall. The combined fleets of Earth, the Pyrian Confederacy, and 5 other former Centauri subject species had gathered for their decisive strike. "All fleet commanders report ready," her tactical officer announced. "The Centauri don't appear to have detected our approach." Rachel allowed herself a moment to appreciate the irony. The same arrogance that had led the Centauri to dismiss humans as primitives now blinded them to the threat gathering at their doorstep. Their mighty sensor networks, like their shields, had been turned against them. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Begin the attack." The battle for the Imperial Palace Station would be remembered as the moment an empire's foundations finally shattered. Human ships led the charge, their modified weapons cutting through Centauri defenses like they didn't exist. Behind them came waves of Pyrian dreadnoughts, their crews fighting with the fury of centuries of oppression finally unleashed. Back in the council chamber, Vexer watched in horror as his supposedly impregnable station's defenses failed one by one. "How?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" "They're using our own defense grid against us," Admiral Nexus reported grimly. "Every shot we fire, every shield we raise, makes their attacks stronger. They've turned our technology into a weapon." The station shuddered as another section of its outer ring collapsed. Emergency force fields flickered and died. Through the chamber's viewport, Vexer could see escape pods launching in all directions, his mighty empire's leaders fleeing like common criminals. "Chancellor," Nexus's voice was quiet now, "we must consider surrender. The humans have offered terms." "Surrender?" Vexer spat the word like poison. "To primitives. Never. We are Centauri. We." His words were cut short as the chamber's doors burst open. Human Marines in powered armor stormed in, led by a face Vexer recognized from intelligence briefings. Commander Diana Pottle of New Haven. "High Chancellor Vexer." Diana's voice was cold but controlled. "In the name of the Earth Defense Force and the Allied Species Coalition, I accept your surrender." Vexor looked around the chamber, at his cowering council members, at Admiral Nexus already removing her rank insignia, at the human warriors whose primitive technology had brought down an empire. In that moment, he finally understood. The Centauri had never truly been superior. They had simply stopped evolving, stopped adapting, convinced of their own perfection. "The terms," he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Unconditional surrender of all Centauri forces," Diana replied. "Transfer of military control to the Coalition. Fair trials for war crimes, and immediate independence for all subjugated worlds." As Vexor was led away in custody, Admiral Rachel Thompson arrived to oversee the station's occupation. She found Diana staring out at the debris field that had once been the Centauri home fleet. "Hard to believe it's almost over," Diana mused. "Just over a year ago, they seemed invincible." Rachel nodded. That was their weakness. They believed their own propaganda about being superior beings. They never imagined that humans, that any species could adapt and overcome. "The real work begins now," Diana said, watching as Coalition ships moved into defensive positions around the station. "Building something better than what we've torn down." Reports were already coming in from across former Centauri space, centuries-old rivalries being set aside as former subject species worked together to establish a new order. The humans' example had shown them a different way. Strength through unity rather than dominance through fear. The war wasn't quite over. Pockets of Centauri resistance would need to be dealt with, and the complex task of dismantling an empire would take years. But as Rachel Thompson looked out at the stars her people had once feared to reach for, she knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not just survived its trial by fire. It had emerged as a leader, a unifier, a force for change in a cosmos that had grown stagnant under Centauri rule. The age of empires was ending. The age of alliances was about to begin. A new dawn. 5 years after the fall of the Imperial Palace Station, the Great Hall of the newly constructed Galactic Coalition headquarters on New Haven hummed with activity. Dr. Olivia Santos walked through its crystalline corridors, marveling at how the rebuilt colony had become a symbol of cooperation between formerly warring species. Representatives from 20 different civilizations filled the chamber ahead, their voices a mix of languages, all being seamlessly translated by technology that would have seemed miraculous just a few years ago. She spotted Diana Patel, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Coalition, deep in discussion with War Master Kaz of the Pyrians. "The latest reports from the reconstruction efforts are encouraging," Diana was saying as Olivia approached. "The last of the Centauri segregation barriers are being dismantled in the outer systems." Kaz nodded, his scaled features showing what Olivia had learned to recognize as satisfaction. "And the technology sharing initiative." Proceeding better than expected, Olivia interjected, joining their conversation. "The integration of Pyrian quantum mechanics with human innovation principles has opened up possibilities we never imagined. We're not just rebuilding. We're creating something entirely new." The meeting that followed would set the course for the next decade of galactic development. Representatives from former Centauri worlds sat alongside their one-time enemies, working together to ensure no single power could ever again dominate through force or fear. In orbit above them, General Marcus Way, now Fleet Commander of the Coalition Defense Force, supervised a joint training exercise. Human ships maneuvered in perfect harmony with vessels from a dozen other species, their crews learning to combine their different tactical approaches into something greater than the sum of its parts. "Remarkable," his executive officer commented, watching the display. 5 years ago, half of these species were trying to kill each other. Way smiled, remembering the desperate days when humanity had fought alone. "That's because 5 years ago, we all thought strength meant standing alone. The Centauri taught everyone that lesson, and we all learned the wrong things from it." The exercise demonstrated how far they'd come. Where the Centauri had hoarded their technology, the Coalition shared innovations freely. Where the Empire had demanded uniformity, the Alliance celebrated diversity. Each species brought its own unique perspective to every challenge. Back on the surface, Rachel Thompson, now serving as Coalition Security Director, met with a group of former Centauri scientists who had chosen to join the New Order. They were working on converting their people's vast military-industrial complex to peaceful purposes. The Void Drive prototype exceeded all expectations, one of the scientists reported excitedly. By combining our understanding of quantum fields with human intuitive engineering, we've achieved faster-than-light travel without the energy cost or navigational limitations of traditional jump drives. Rachel nodded, remembering how the Centauri had once used their technological superiority to oppress others. Now that same knowledge, freely shared and combined with other perspectives, was opening up the galaxy for everyone. In another part of the complex, a historic ceremony was taking place. The last holdout groups of Centauri resistance had finally agreed to lay down their arms. Leading the delegation was former Admiral Nexus, who had spent the years since the Empire's fall working to convince her people that change was necessary. "We were wrong," she announced to the assembled Coalition Council. "For centuries, we believed that greatness came from power over others. We watched humanity rise from a single world to challenge us, and even then, we didn't understand. But now we see. True strength comes from lifting others up, not holding them down." The ceremony marked more than just the end of resistance. It represented the final transformation of the galaxy from an empire ruled by fear to an alliance built on mutual respect and cooperation. As evening fell on New Haven, the various leaders gathered for a more informal celebration. Olivia found herself sharing a quiet moment with Diana, looking out over the city where their journey had begun. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how far we've come," Diana mused. "Remember when we thought victory just meant survival?" Olivia nodded. "We did more than survive. We changed the rules of the game." The Centauri thought they were unbeatable because they had the most advanced technology. They never understood that true advancement comes from combining different perspectives, different ways of thinking. "That's humanity's real gift to the galaxy," General Wei added, joining them. "Not our technology or our tactics, but our ability to adapt, to bring people together, to show that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." As if to emphasize his point, a group of children ran past them. Human, Parian, and even Centauri youngsters playing together, unconcerned with the ancient rivalries of their parents. They were growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was the norm, not the exception. The sun set on New Haven, its light catching the crystalline spires of the Coalition headquarters. Below, the city buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy worked, learned, and lived together. Ships from dozens of worlds moved through the skylanes, their crews no longer concerned with showing strength through dominance. The galaxy had changed forever. The age of empires was over, replaced by something far more powerful, an alliance of equals, each contributing their unique strengths to create something greater than any one species could achieve alone. And it had all begun with humanity's refusal to bow, their determination to show the galaxy a better way. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they seemed to shine brighter than before, as if reflecting the hope of countless worlds now free to reach for them together. The day the galaxy had bowed to humanity had become the day humanity helped the galaxy rise as one.